friends. Welcome back to She Rocks at College Live. I am your host, Clarissa, and you're watching She Rocks at College Live, a live show that happens almost every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is a show where college women in their 20s and 30s come on to just chat about college life in general. And for the past 3 weeks, we have been hosting this series called Finding Brilliance in the Bees. And it's an intimate video series all about the integration of academics and life and the beauty that can emerge from it if you allow, from all of the shame and the resilience that you might experience as a college student and how it can help you to step into your worth, especially as a non-traditional college student. And the reason why I was compelled to build this series around the title Finding Brilliance in the Bees is because a few months ago, I sent out a survey to over 3,000 college women asking them what they felt like the online community, specifically YouTube, was lacking when it came to tips, advice, and strategies for college women, it's specifically non-traditional college women. And the feedback that I got back was overwhelmingly most college women were dying for real, raw, deep, and intimate conversations around what it's really like to go through college when your life is imperfect, when you are working full-time and going to college, when your life is falling apart and yet you still have to show up for your lectures every single week. And my intent with this series was to fully embrace conversations around mental health, around perfectionism, around unreal expectations, grades, relationships, because the sole purpose of me building She Rocks at College was to create a safe place for us to grow together, right? To heal from all of the programming around what it means to be smart, what it means to be a good student, and what it means to be brilliant and successful. And this is the final episode in the Finding Brilliance in the Bees series. And I want to give a recap for those of you who are just catching it now on the past 3 episodes, because I think it's really important for us to touch base on where we've been, right? And it's going to help you to make sense of why this episode is here today, right? So the very first episode of Finding Brilliance in the Bees was all about exposing my personal shame of being from a low-income neighborhood, being Latina, failing out of a bio major, attending a community college, and still feeling like I needed to prove my intelligence and my worth as a woman of color, always fighting stereotypes and always feeling like I needed to be better than everyone else in order to be seen as worthy, as valuable, as being able to contribute something to society. Episode 2 of Finding Brilliance in the Bees was an intimate conversation between my husband and I about the toll that me being in college, specifically nursing school, took on our relationship. So I exposed my shame around feeling like I couldn't keep my life all together, pressuring Elvis, who's my husband, to marry me and move in with me and, portray this perfect lifestyle. Dealing with my family basically falling apart when my mom came out, living on my own for the first time with my husband, and doing a job at handling it all. So at this point in my life, while I was able to maintain honors, the rest of my life was falling apart, but I was still trying to pretend like everything was perfect and killing myself trying to do it. Episode 3, which aired last week, was all about exposing my fear of everyone who watches me on YouTube, finding out that I was a B student while I was in nursing school, and me overachieving to try and maintain my image of being smart and better than everyone else, and my fear of being seen as mediocre, especially as a woman of color, as a Latina. And if you're now just stumbling on my YouTube channel, I really encourage you to go and watch those videos when you have the opportunity, because you're going to get to meet me in a very different way than my more polished videos. One of the reasons why I wanted to start this live show is because Frankly, I am just so tired of perfection. I'm so tired of the editing. I want to be able to just openly come on here and talk as though it is a unedited podcast, and to have conversations with you girls. And that's the reason why these episodes are hosted live, so that we can have conversations in the chat. So if you're here right now and if you're watching live, go ahead and say hello in the chat. Tell me where you're tuning in from. So the way that I rolled out this series was very intentional. I was actually following a strategy by Brené Brown, who is a shame researcher. So she's devoted her whole life to studying shame and shame's effect on our ability to interact and connect with other people. And the strategy that I use for this series is all about helping you to build shame resilience. Now, I'm going to recap a little bit about what shame is, because I think that you need to understand the definition of shame in order to follow along with this series and in order to get the most out of today's episode. So shame is the fear of being perceived as flawed and unworthy of acceptance or belonging. Shame is really the voice of perfectionism. So if you have identified as a perfectionist, and I want to clarify that a perfectionist isn't somebody who does everything perfectly all the time. It's somebody who wants to maintain the image that they're perfect. So they go above and beyond to try to protect the self-image of never making mistakes, of never doing anything wrong, of having their life entirely together. And they really go throughout their life trying to protect that image. And so it's not necessarily somebody who is neat and organized all the time, but a true perfectionist is somebody who has a deep fear of being perceived as flawed and unworthy. And it really isn't the quest for perfectionism that is so painful for people who identify as perfectionists. It's failing to meet the expectations, specifically the unattainable expectations that get placed on us by society. That's what really leads to the pain and wash of shame that prevents you from stepping into your own brilliance, prevents you from really seeing your full potential as a student. And so tonight's episode is all about self-esteem and how to build your self-esteem as a student. But we can't talk about self-esteem without talking about shame and without talking about shame resilience, because self-esteem is defined as confidence in one's own worth and one's own ability. Now, see how shame and self-esteem go hand in hand, because shame is the fear of being perceived as unworthy, while self-esteem is having an assurance in your own worth, in your value, in what you have to offer. And so in order for us to build our self-esteem, what we really need to focus on is building our shame resilience. And shame resilience, as defined by Brené Brown, is the ability to recognize shame when we experience it and to move through it in a constructive way that allows us to maintain our authenticity and grow from our experiences. Now, like I said, my intent with this series was very intentional. I filmed the first 3 videos by just exposing my shame, exposing these unwanted identities that I was trying to hide from society, that I was trying to hide from my YouTube subscribers, that I was trying to hide from, the students who I work with inside of She Rocks at College, which is the small company that I've built. And so what I did in the episode is I basically outed myself and outed these unwanted identities and how they made me feel unworthy, and they made me feel like I had nothing to offer the world. And when I say that was very intentional, the reason why I say that is because Brené Brown has a very specific framework that she walks people through to help them build shame resilience. And the 4 elements of her framework are: number 1, the ability to recognize shame. So that's the ability to understand what your shame triggers are. So the things, the thoughts, the experiences that make you feel like you are flawed or like you are unworthy. And she also asks us to really pay attention to how we react to shame, because shame is a survival emotion, meaning that it'll put you into a fight or flight mode. And when your body gets put into a fight or flight mode, it will typically do one of three things. It'll either move away, meaning it'll try to hide, keep secrets in order to prevent someone from perceiving you as flawed or unworthy. When you are experiencing shame, or that fight or flight response that shame can trigger because it is a survival emotion, some people will move towards, meaning that they will become people pleasers. They will do anything and everything to seek approval from someone else, even if it means acting out of character. And then the third way that people will act when they are in shame, or when they are experiencing shame, is that they will move against, meaning that they will use shame to fight shame. So they will try to insult the other person, or make the other person feel as terrible and as unworthy as they currently feel. Some people get aggressive. Some people try to regain their power in any way by just being flat out mean. And so step number one, or element number one of building shame resilience, is your ability to recognize shame. And through this series, what I've done is I've outed my shame. I've shared with you my shame triggers, things that make me feel like I'm not smart enough, that like I'm not worthy enough, that I'm not capable enough. And I've also talked to you during these 3 episodes all about how I acted when I was feeling and experiencing shame. So that's the reason why the series was built the way that it was. The second step to practicing shame resilience is to practice critical awareness. So critical awareness means that you know that something exists, so you know that something is happening, and you also understand why it's happening and how it's impacting you, how it's affecting your life, the kind of results it is producing in your life. And me holding myself back or trying to protect my image of being smart caused me to be not a very nice person. It caused me to have a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, and I just become really competitive, which is not in my nature. And I acted in ways that I am very embarrassed about, but that I have learned from. And the third element of building shame resilience, which will help you to build your self-esteem, is called reaching out. So this is where you're finding a network of people who you can share your shame with, where you can talk about what you're feeling and what you're experiencing and why you're experiencing it. You can talk about those often we call them embarrassing moments, but they're really shameful moments that we don't want anyone else to know about. But the more that you out yourself, the more that you get ahead of it, the better you're going to feel, especially when it is in a safe environment. And not everybody deserves to hear your shame experiences, because some people will use it against you, and that's not very constructive, right? The last element of building shame resilience is called speaking shame. So this is having the ability to speak your pain, to share and describe to another person what it is that you are feeling and why you're feeling it, so that you can learn from it and also ask for the support that you need in order to be able to move through it. Most of us, though we know what shame feels like, we've never been taught how to really react to shame, experience shame, sit with our shame in a way that is constructive. So instead, most of us are out here in society moving through shame very destructively, moving through our negative emotions in a way where we feel completely out of our authenticity, where we feel completely out of control of our lives, where we feel like it's eating us from the inside out. And it isn't until someone comes out and talks about this that we can begin to take the actions that are going to help us come out of it better people. And so tonight, I'd like to walk you through the process of building shame resilience, because through the process of building shame resilience, you are going to then build your self-confidence. If you've been around She Rocks at College for a while, if you've been on any of these episodes, you know that I don't like to provide superficial solutions. I like to go deep. I like to provide the science behind things. I like to really understand what's going on with us mentally, emotionally, and physically, because I think it isn't until we can become really in tune with what is going on with us on a biological level, a psychological level, on emotional level, that we can reclaim our power and create the kind of academic experience and life experience it is that we want. And so I know that I don't have the most flashy videos. I understand that this kind of content might not appeal to everybody, but I know that there are college women out there like you who are watching right now who need to hear this and who need to have somebody on here on YouTube who is going this in depth on these topics, who is not afraid to go deep and not afraid to talk about things that are hard to talk about and hard to come to terms with. So the very first thing that we need to do in order to build our shame resilience, and again, I'm just following those 4 elements that Brene Brown has kindly put together for us and shared. And so the first step is having the ability to recognize shame and practice critical awareness. So this is all about understanding your shame triggers and how you react when you are experiencing shame. So this is identifying the thought patterns that trigger anxiety and perfectionism and how it harms you. So I have a list of questions that I like to give to the students that I work with to help them really come to bring up to awareness all of these unattainable expectations that they have of themselves as students and how it's affecting them to not be able to live up to them. To really understand where these expectations came from, where they learned them, and to be honest with themselves of whether or not they truly want that for themselves, and if it's serving them to try to chase after it. So the list of questions are: number 1, what's your ideal of a successful student? And how much do you feel like you match that ideal? Where did this ideal come from? Who benefits from it? And more importantly, who does it harm? There are certain images, portrayals of what a student should look like, should act like, should study like, should be like out there. And many of us have never questioned it. We've never questioned where it came from. We don't question who it benefits to be that way, to fit into that tiny box. And more importantly, we've never asked whether or not we even want that for ourselves, and the harm that it's doing to us to try to live up to it. The third question is, whose judgment or criticism do you fear? This question is important because remember, shame is the fear of being perceived as flawed and unworthy of acceptance or belonging. So whose judgment or criticism are you trying to avoid, and are you afraid of, or who are you trying to please? I then want you to create an exhaustive list of all of the situations that trigger shame for you. So I'm talking about situations that make you feel like you are not smart enough, talented enough, worthy enough, pretty enough, educated enough, skinny enough, sometimes strong enough or chubby enough, fat enough. What are all of those situations? Once you've gone through this process of practicing awareness, critical awareness around your shame triggers, the next thing that you want to do is to really feel the full spectrum of shame, to recognize it in your body when you are experiencing the emotion of shame. And this is really hard because shame is a really uncomfortable emotion. Like, it makes my skin crawl. I want the world to swallow me whole when I experience shame. It feels like a hole in my stomach. My face gets really hot when I'm ashamed. I can't get out of the room fast enough. When I feel that, I know that in that moment, I'm experiencing shame. Something about what I'm thinking is causing me to feel unworthy and less than in that moment. And the instant that I start to experience that pit in my stomach, like I want to run, my whole body gets hot, I want to escape, I know that there is a thought that I'm thinking that is not serving me. And the reason why I'm asking you to really feel the full spectrum of your shame emotion and how it feels like for you is because the faster that you can identify when you're about to go into a shame spiral, have all of those negative thoughts that make you feel less than human, the quicker you can stop it in the process and move through it in a way that serves you. So the way that you feel what shame feels like in your body, because I often have students ask me like, well, how do you feel an emotion? The best way that I have been able to express this or to teach students how to feel their emotions is to ask them to describe what it feels like in physical symptoms and sensations, like your mouth gets dry, maybe your breathing speeds up and gets more shallow, maybe your hands start to sweat, maybe you feel like you have an upset stomach, maybe it feels like you can't get a full breath in, maybe your throat starts to close up, maybe your face gets really red and hot, maybe you start to feel like really shaky and jittery, and really like out loud name what those symptoms are or write them down and describe how you act whenever you are in situations where shame is starting to take over. It's really important for you to witness yourself in shame, to notice who you become when you're experiencing the emotion of shame, because again, the more aware you are of when it's happening, the quicker you can move through it. I wish that I could tell you that there was a way to never, ever, ever experience shame, but unfortunately, that's just not reality. It's not going to happen, at least not now. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but right now it's an emotion that we can't really get rid of. The best that we can do is learn how to move through it, how to allow it to move through us in a constructive way where we are not self-sabotaging. And we are not self-harming in a way. Self-harm just isn't physical self-harm, but it can also be like emotional abuse that you're doing to yourself, right? And so the second step is really just feeling the full spectrum of shame, of that emotion of shame. The third step in building shame resilience is learning how to speak shame in a safe community. I like to call this outing yourself. So speaking shame is learning how to talk about your pain, to describe to another person what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're thinking, so that you can learn from the experience, so that you can get the support, and so that you can really feel like you're not the only one. Because again, shame is an emotion that makes us feel like we are not worthy of belonging. So it's really important that we out ourselves, right? We talk about what is making us feel ashamed, and that we do it with somebody who deserves to hear it, who can hold space for us, and who can make us feel like we're not alone in that moment, and can really just sit with us while we are having this experience of shame. Now, the reason why I like to call it outing yourself is because the biggest thing with shame is that we don't want people to find out. We're afraid that if people find out the truth about us, that they're not going to love us, that they're not going to like us. And so shame causes you to be really consumed in hiding yourself, in secrecy, because you're afraid that someone's going to tell the world the truth about you. And that's the worst thing that can happen, right? If people really knew that you weren't perfect, if people knew that you didn't have your crap together, if people found out that you failed biology for the third time, or that you're repeating, or this is your 7th nursing program that you tried to get into. But the moment that you out yourself, the moment that you can talk about your own experience and own it in a way where you've learned from it, no one can hold anything against you. You no longer have to live in fear that people are going to find out, because you've already told them. You've already owned it. You've already processed it. And you've chosen to have it be a part of your story, to have it be a part of making you into the woman it is that you are. But again, when we're first talking about shameful experiences, it's really important that we're careful with who we share these shame experiences with, that person, that we understand that person can really hold space for us in that moment. The fourth step of building shame resilience, which again, the only way I believe to really build self-esteem is to build it through shame resilience. Because again, self-esteem by definition is defined as the confidence in your own worth and your own ability. And shame is the complete opposite of that. Shame is the fear that you will be perceived as unworthy. So the only way to build your self-esteem is to build your resilience to shame, meaning your ability to move through shame and to not associate the things that happen to you in your life as defining you as being worthy or not worthy, capable or not capable, smart or not smart enough. It's the ability to detach the things that happen to you are not you. That's what true shame resilience is about. And that's how you build your self-worth, i.e., your self-esteem. And so the last step in building shame resilience is really redefining. It's through redefining academic success for yourself and learning to lead yourself into a growth mindset. Now, if you don't know what a growth mindset is, this is a concept that was coined by Dr. Carol Dweck. And so she talks about in society, there are two different mindsets. There is the fixed mindset, and usually this is perfectionists, right? Perfectionists have this fixed mindset, meaning that they believe that your personal qualities, talents, and intelligence are fixed. You're born with them, and you cannot change them. You can't grow them. You can't cultivate them. That's what a fixed mindset, i.e. a perfectionist, believes. On the other hand, a growth-minded person, or a person who has the growth mindset, this person believes that talents, personal qualities, your intelligence can be developed through effort, through mentoring, and through practice. The growth mindset believes that you can become. The growth-minded person believes and is driven by growth, potential, and the pure magic of becoming. They have a vision of possibility, a curiosity, and a wonder. They, like perfectionists, want to be the best. But they are not so concerned with excellence and being above mediocre that they get so stuck in doing it perfectly and getting things right on the first try. They don't care what their path to greatness looks like. They don't care if they fail along the way. In fact, they expect it. They don't care if they're challenged along the way. In fact, they encourage it. They really are addicted to the process of becoming. of seeing who they can be. They realize that there is power in not yet. That there is possibility in the not having achieved things yet. That's what really motivates them. While a fixed-minded person, i.e. a perfectionist, somebody who is consumed with doing things perfectly on the first try, never having to put any effort, having things just naturally come to them. This fixed-minded person is consumed by trying to do everything perfectly all the time. They are driven by classes, by assignments, by situations, by majors and life experiences that make them feel extremely accomplished all of the time. To them, there is no room for failure. There is no room for becoming. This fixed-minded person or this perfectionist wants to make zero mistakes. And this can result in them making choices that are safe. They stay comfortable. They never really grow because they never really get challenged, because all they care about is maintaining this image of being the best. And so they never really get to see their full potential because they never push themselves to the limits, because they're so afraid that they're going to be seen as unworthy if they try. So this last step of building your shame resilience so that you can build your self-confidence is all about starting to build this growth mindset, right? And working on your belief system. So the thing that I want to talk about here is that a belief, right? A belief is just a thought, a sentence. A thought is just a sentence, right? It's a string of words put together. A belief is a thought, a string of words that you've chosen to believe and adopt as true, as Bible, as fact. And every thought that you have is a choice. I'm going to say that again because this is a concept that we talk a lot about inside of Study School, which is my signature program where I help college women build study routines and rituals that really support the kind of college experience it is that they want based off of their lifestyle. We talk a lot about developing this growth mindset and managing our mind and cultivating a growth mindset. And one of the things that I'm always challenging them to think about is that all of your thoughts are choices. And if you think a thought enough, if you say it to yourself enough, it becomes a belief. It becomes something that you start to believe as true. And just like you can believe negative things about yourself, things that harm your self-image, things that make you feel unworthy, you can choose to think thoughts that serve you, that help you to build a belief that you are worthy, that you are smart enough, that you are capable enough. And the way that we start to build the growth mindset is through creating thoughts that help us to become who we want to be. And it's really hard, this practice of changing your thoughts to help build your shame resilience and build your self-esteem. It's hard work because your brain, through something called cognitive dissonance, wants to keep on believing what it's been believing. So anytime you try to introduce your brain to a new way of looking at something, a different perspective, it fights against it really, really, really hard, because it goes against everything that it's known up until this point. And so on a daily basis, consistently, the students that I work with are drilling into themselves these new thoughts that they want to turn into beliefs about themselves so that they can start to cultivate this growth mindset. And we always, I always tell them to start their sentences with, I'm working on believing that. I'm working on believing that I can pass this class. I'm working on believing that I'm a person who can lose weight. I'm working on believing that I am meant to be a nurse. I'm working on believing that I can get into this medical program. I'm working on believing that I'm a person who is consistent. And again, a belief is just a thought, a string of words that you have chosen to believe as true. And every thought that you have is a choice. So the last part of building shame resilience is the hardest part. It's creating a new thought that helps you to become the person who you want to be, that helps you step into your worth, into your brilliance, into your potential. And to recap, I'm going to go through the elements of building shame resilience, which in turn will build your self-esteem. So step number 1 is to recognize shame, the thoughts that cause you, the experiences that cause you to feel shame, and understanding how you react to shame. Step number 2 is to feel the full spectrum of shame in your body, to recognize when you are experiencing shame, to be able to describe what it feels like in your body and actual physical sensations, to describe how you act when you're in shame. The third step is learning how to speak shame in a safe environment. And again, speaking shame is the ability to describe to another person what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and learn from it so that you can ask for what it is that you need. So you can ask in turn from that person what it is that you need. But in order to be able to ask someone what it is that you need, you have to understand what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and what you need to be able to move through it. The fourth step is redefining academic success and learning to lead yourself into a growth mindset. I have a couple videos here on my YouTube channel. If this is the very first time that you are, tuning in to this live show, I see Anna saying you're extremely inspiring. Hello, Anna. Thank you so much for that sweet comment. I have a video on this YouTube channel all about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And I go into it in a lot of detail and how perfectionism or that fixed mindset causes a lot of anxiety in students. So if this is something that you feel like resonated with you, that it's really landing with you, and you want to dive deeper into learning about the growth mindset in the fixed mindset and perfectionism and how all of that ties to anxiety, I highly suggest that you go and watch that video. I'll make sure that after this video post that I put a link to all of the Finding Brilliance in the Bees videos that were a part of this series, and also that I put a link to that specific video, which is called, I think the specific title is How to Overcome Perfectionism and the Anxiety That It Causes. So if you just type that into YouTube, my video will be one of the first ones that pop up, because I think it will be really helpful, especially for college women, especially if you're a non-traditional college student. And a non-traditional college student is a college student who is older than 21, right? Your typical college age student is 18 to 21. They're living on campus. They don't really have anything else going on besides school. A non-traditional college student is anyone who identifies as first gen, who works while they're in college, who is taking online college courses, who is older than 21, who is really outside of the mold of what we think of when we think of a traditional college student. I think that I was myself a non-traditional college student. I feel like we struggle with our worth the most. We struggle with imposter syndrome the most. We struggle with feeling like we are worthy to be in those lecture halls the most. And my mission really is to help you to believe that you are worthy of being there, to believe in your own brilliance and to own it, and to really be proud of yourself for the progress that you're making, and to not let your past experiences dictate who you can become and what you can achieve. And so with that being said, I want to thank you so much for being on here with me tonight. Like I said, I do these shows every Thursday for the most part at 6 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes I get a wrench thrown in my plans, as I do work part-time as a labor and delivery nurse, and sometimes my supervisor forgets when I ask her to have Thursdays off so I can do these shows for you. So next week we actually will not be having a show, but we'll be back the week after. And until then, I hope that you have an amazing week. And like always, at the end of the show, I try to take a look to see if there were any comments left. And I already saw Anna's, and she said that putting it into practice is the hard bit because the thoughts feel so real. You're right. Our brain actually cannot tell the difference between a actual threat, like a lion trying to eat us, and us just thinking about a lion eating us, which is crazy to me because we've evolved so much as people, right? As like a race, but our brain is still very, very, very primitive. So I'm really curious to see like what, I don't know if I'll still be around, but like how we evolve and how our brain evolves to change and to become more enlightened. So Anna, yeah, you're right about that. Jessica says, I have really been struggling lately with the possibility of failure. You have helped me to realize that I quit before I can fail. I am going to push through this semester, and if I fail, I will be okay. You will. You will. Failure is just feedback. It is not an attack. That's what I tell all of my students. Failure is just feedback. It is not an attack on who you are. It's just feedback that you can use to your benefit, that you can use to change, to grow, to adopt, to become better. And so I welcome it because every time I fail, I'm learning something new, learning a new way not to do something, learning a better way to get something done. And so it's not to say that I don't feel sad when I fail, because I absolutely do, but I just don't make it mean anything. I see it for what it is, just something that didn't work in the moment, and I get to learn from it, and I get to change, and I get to become better. And watching myself progress and watching myself become the woman that I envisioned myself to be when I was a little girl is worth all those failures to me. So thank you everyone for commenting, and I hope that you have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye.